do cyclists know some secret that others don't? What's the thing about bicycles and wax and no one else using them? Hi, welcome to BikeGremlin YouTube channel. My name is Relja Novovic from Novi Sad, Serbia, and today I'll be talking about greasing or not greasing, waxing bicycle chains. In this video I will put a table of contents in the video's description with all the links for further information, and so that you can skip to the parts of interest, and this first part will be called introduction. And the first thing that I want to mention, the first thing that sort of tickled my curiosity is that bicycle chain waxing has been present for over half a century now, which sounds like a lot of time. And in the past few years, or maybe a decade, it's been becoming more and more popular. And the interesting thing for me was that no other industry, including motorcycle chains, uses wax for lubrication. If you know any exceptions, use the comment section below. And I also would like to, because the lubrication topics often get heated, so before you start being very fiery in the comments, please watch the whole video, and then if you have any additions or corrections, use the comment section or the BikeGremlin forum on bikegremlin.net. That's even better, because then you can always find questions and answers, and YouTube sometimes sort of swallows them in a whole bunch of all other stuff. Anyway, so that was for me the interesting thing. Do cyclists know some secret that others don't? What's the thing about bicycles and wax and no one else using them? And so for the first thing, for a sort of an experiment, I want to show a thing that is the biggest advantage of wax as a lubricant for a bicycle chain, and at the same time the biggest disadvantage. So before we do anything else, let's try to zoom in the camera and try this experiment and explain what's going on. Here I have this wax. It's a typical wax. There are models that they have a better reputation, worse, but this is what I would call an average performing dripping wax. I didn't use any wax that you need to melt. We'll get to that later now for this. And this is another interesting product that is super eco nano lubricant that uses super duper particles and whatnot. And it is also, basically when it dries out, it looks a lot like wax. So not much of a difference here. And so let's put these in order. So this is wax, this is the super product, and I'll use oil here because I need to put it later on. Oil doesn't need to get dry and cool. So when you're pedaling, and if you cross chain or you shift under load or do any other thing that's not perfect but expected when cycling, you will put some shearing stress on your chain. And let's see what happens when you apply some shearing stress on wax and compare it to oil. So let's try to do this. There, you can see I've put some shearing strain, and as you can see, there is no more lubricant in between. This part in the middle is now completely free of lubricant. Let's see what happens if I rock this. Yeah, it's gotten stuck here on this screwdriver. It won't go away so easily, and it won't fall off, but if I'm how to say, persistent enough, or if the section is small enough, it can fall off eventually. Now let's try the other lubricant. Let's clean this. All this was degreased completely using alcohol and brake cleaner very thoroughly, so I wanted to simulate your degreased bicycle chain on a piece of metal. So now let's try the other lubricant and see what happens when I apply the same thing. As you can see, no lubricant in the middle, and let's see how well this one sticks. I'm almost able to, this is a bigger piece, and I'm almost able to take it off, and there are still some parts left, but I can wipe it off, shear it off, or something like that. It can be removed with friction alone relatively easily. Now let us try oil. Oil is liquid, and here is a bit of oil before it all drips off. Let's see what happens if I try to put some shearing stress on oil. There, you see, as if nothing happened. It flows back and keeps lubricating this. Now if I wish to remove oil from this screwdriver, I can do as much flinging as I want. I can even try to put some dirt on my floor of the garage, so I can slip and fall. And if you can see, this is still oily. The oil clings onto it, and I cannot just rub it free of oil. It will be still having some oil stuck to it. And this experiment, I didn't do this before. I didn't try this before filming. I am that irresponsible or that certain in my theoretical and practical experience. Whichever of those, one not excluding the other. So this shows the biggest advantage and disadvantage of wax. The disadvantage is obvious. When you shear it, it will not flow back to re-lubricate, but at the same time, that property also lets it make your chain cleaner, because it drops off in flakes, shears off, and any dirt that got stuck with it will also shear off and fall off your chain. So you will be having a pretty clean but not perfectly lubricated chain. Oil, on the other hand, is more, how do I say, it flows back, it keeps lubricating, but it also acts as a sort of a fly paper, if that's the proper term, and a lot of dust and dirt particles cling to it and stick, and so that makes your drivetrain and your chain a bit dirtier. And another thing that is the problem, particles of sand and dirt and dust can act as a sort of a sandpaper and speed up the wearing of your chain. So your chain will not last as long if it is dirty, even if it's lubricated. An unlubricated chain will get destroyed very quickly. You can in one ride break it or have it worn during one climb if it's completely dry. I'm not talking light lubrication, but really a dry chain. You can try it, don't take my word for that. And if it's well lubricated but dirty, that will not kill it instantly, but it will speed up the wear, and you will get fewer miles from your chain. So both of those things, both of those extremes are not good, and both the oil and the wax have their pros and cons. Wax doesn't put dirt on your chain and gets off it along with dirt, but it's less good of a lubricant in realistic conditions. And oil, on the other hand, is a better lubricant, but it's but it also attracts dirt, and so it's always a trade-off. And I want to note one thing here. This is my motorcycle, and I don't have a picture right now of the chain that is inside the engine and that keeps it all in sync when you are running it. That chain is relatively thin, almost as thin as a bicycle chain, stronger but not very thick compared to this one. This one is at least double the size and thickness, if not more. However, the chain inside the motorcycle is always in a bath of clean filtered oil, so it's always clean and always lubricated. Those are ideal conditions for a chain, and so this is Yamaha 600 phaser, the old carburetor indestructible motor, and the chain inside the engine can last for 100,000 kilometers without problems. And the drive chain lasts about 15,000 kilometers. So that's less than a quarter of the mileage that you get from the thinner chain, and that is the difference that lubrication makes. I also want to note, before we get on more about wax, to note the Scott oiler. I'll try to put a picture somewhere in the shot, but this is what you can see from the Scott oiler. There is an oil tube, and here is a small tube that drips oil, very thin oil, onto my chain. The canister of oil is beneath the seat, and the vacuums are put onto the carburetors from the other side. We won't be bothering cameraman to shoot that, but on one of these carburetors there's a vacuum, and when I put more throttle, it draws more oil onto the chainring. And what this results in is that my chain is always clean and lubricated, because it's using very thin oil that flings off the chain along with any dirt that got stuck in it. And so the chain is again clean and lubricated. And you cannot do that practically if you don't always keep dripping, because otherwise you will drive 100 miles and then your chain will be dry. So you need to always keep adding lubricant, and that is why this system is a good sort of a compromise, because it keeps your chain lubricated and it just works. And the dirt that gets slung out is covers. I can remove it from here and from this bottom even. It doesn't put stains on the co-driver, the pylon, but it gets slung a bit down here. And if I use a thicker oil, it won't be working that well for cleaning. It will get stuck to the chain. Something like this is impractical to do on bicycles, because we don't spin nearly as quickly. So there's not enough centrifugal force to like you're spinning the chain like this with your hand. That's a lot faster, a lot higher centrifugal force. And so that kind of system with very thin oil that gets flung out and reapplied is not practical. Another problem is also that you need some sort of a canister and the tubing and everything. And bicycles are not usually single speed, they have several gears, and so that's not a very good option. So we need another compromise, and to not have to stop and re-lubricate chain every 10 miles, we need a slightly thicker oil, or we use wax. And again, both of those have their downsides. And in my experiments over the past 2 years, I rode my commuter and my gravel bicycles with wax, and I didn't get any difference in mileage from a chain. I used the same model of chains, and I compared them and ran tests on both bicycles. And even in the summer, when my city has a lot of sand and dust, and that should make the chain with lubricated oil a shorter life, because it all gets stuck thanks to oil. And I was expecting to get longer life if I use wax, because wax doesn't stick all that. However, in practice it turns out that I got the same mileage with very minor differences that are probably a margin of error. So my conclusion is that the upside of a cleaner chain is sort of weighed in balance with the downside and the problems that I showed when it comes to wax as a lubricant. And so it sort of evens out, even in dry conditions. In wet conditions during the winter and autumn, I also, to my surprise, didn't see much difference. I was expecting wax to be more quickly, more easily washed out by rain, and all these say for dry conditions only. However, in my experience, in practice, I did not notice or measure any increased chain wear or even rust compared to using oil. The only difference, arguably, might be that if the rain is not really heavy, if it's a heavy rain, not just downpour, but a heavy, decent rain, then both the oil run chain and the wax run chain, you need to relubricate them. when the rain dries out from your chain, water is okay lubricant. If you're in a pinch, you can use your water bottle to lubricate your chain. It works. You can try it. But once it dries out, in both cases you need to relubricate the chain. It's not that oil will completely resist water washout. Maybe marginally better if you use very thick oil. I experimented with that also. I'm not sure if it was the thicker paste of dirt and oil that made my chain not be squeaky right away after a heavier rain with very thick oil, but that thick oil got so much dirt to its stock that it was completely impractical, and I very quickly stopped with that experiment and decided this is not worth it. Forget it. But for reasonably thick oils and for waxes, I would say that water washout resistance is fairly similar. Maybe slight advantage towards oil, but nothing that I think would make a difference. Of course, your experience and opinion may differ. This is just sharing information from my experience and my experiments. And now we will show what two bicycles look like after a whole autumn and winter of riding on the same chain. Let's take a look here. This is my gravel bicycle. This one gets washed regularly after a ride in the mud. So this one got a few baths, so to speak, but I did not take the chain off to clean it. I'll get back to molten wax later. I did not take off this chain to clean it. The only thing I did was take a rag and clean the chain from the outside and then reapply a new dripping wax and wait for it to cure, and in the morning clean off the excess and carry on. This doesn't look perfect, but again, this was not washed for about 6 months, the chain itself. I did not bother to wash the drivetrain, and this is, you can see, if you ride a drivetrain with oil, you can tell the difference about how much dirt gets stuck. So this is nothing compared to that. We'll now move to the other bicycle. This chain is well overdue for replacing. And the bicycle is deliberately very dirty. This is supposed to look as ugly, as unattractive to thieves as possible. And this chain is well overdue for replacement, along with my whole drivetrain. Very old cranks, very old cassette. So this is, I drove it to the ground. But this was used a lot for winter cycling on salty roads, and the amount of rust is not greater than it is when I use oil for chain lubrication. So I've used this for winter cycling and for the autumn cycling. So you can see, and the amount of buildup of dirt that you can see on the cassette and on these jockey wheels, they look ugly, I'm sure, but compared to oil, that's nothing. That's really, I would say, compared to oil, it's clean. It's technically not clean, of course. I'm not that blind, but compared to using oil, that's super clean. And now I will briefly discuss the molten wax. Why I did not use it, why I don't plan to use it. And the reason is that for molten wax, you need to remove your chain from the bike. You need to melt your wax in some way. Either you buy a special electrical heater or something that you put on your stove. You need to dip the wax, take it out, let it drip, and then when it dries, cures, put it back on your bike and all that stuff. And for me, that's on one part impractical. On the other hand, you also put some strain on your quick release links if you do that every week, if you ride a lot. And some quick release links are designed to be reused, others are not. I have an article on that. I'll maybe put it in the video description if I don't forget, but you can check that with your chain manufacturer. I think that Shimano and Campagnolo and I'm not even sure, but Shimano and I think SRAM, they don't officially state that you can reuse their links. Again, it's best to check for the particular chain model with your manufacturer, while KMC, they often their chains are for multi-use quick links, but again, it certainly doesn't help the quick release link if you keep opening it and closing it every week. And so to lubricate chain, and I think that if I go to my flat, I want to be able to just quickly lubricate chain on a balcony. I don't want to go through the whole thing of dripping, melting wax in a flat and everything. So for me, that's not practical, and I believe that it can be meditative. I like building bicycle wheels. For me, that's enjoyable and meditative, and dealing with my chain is not my cup of tea, so that's why I don't like the idea of melting wax. The good thing about melting wax is that you do remove your chain and put it in hot wax, and then all the dirt gets cleaned, and so your chain looks cleaner than this one, even though this one was used with wax but without washing, and with that drip wax I didn't put it in a molten wax and take it out. So there are pros and cons to each. Some people have several chains, so they put them in a molten wax once for 3 or 4 chains, and then they replace them in a row, and when there's time they put all 4 back. And so you can organize yourself differently, maybe save some time, but it's not, for me, it's not very practical, and I think it's a good idea to discuss that and share that information. When it comes to this dripping wax, I think White Lightning is the most famous brand. That's not available in my country, unfortunately. I couldn't test that one. But the 2 models I tested, they perform similarly. One of them, this one, cures in about 30 minutes, and then you can go and wipe off the excess and keep riding. This one cures in about 4 hours, and then you can wipe off the excess and keep riding. In both cases, if I start riding right after I've applied it, it gets obviously, apparently pushed out too easily, and I need to reapply it in 1/4 of a time that it normally takes. I usually got about 100 miles, 150 kilometers from either of these in my riding conditions, and your riding conditions and style may differ. That also affects how soon you start hearing chain noise and everything, and of course one rain is enough to make you reapply it. So those are the downsides, and for me oil is more practical in those terms, because I can just apply it to my chain, wipe off the excess and go right away. I don't have to worry about having a ritual. Did I remember to lubricate my chain in the evening if I need to commute in the morning? My commuter bicycle is my practically only and main means of transport, so for me it's important to have that convenience, and I don't care that much about cleanliness. If your criteria and priorities are cleanliness at first, then of course wax would be probably a better option for you. Again, I would not expect higher mileage. I hear that a lot. I wanted to experiment. In my experience, wax does not make your chain last longer unless you do a lot more rigorous a method of cleaning and lubricating your chain. That takes time. So which one outweighs the other? The same goes for oil. If I remove my chain every week and wash it and then lubricate it, even with oil, it lasts longer, but the amount of time for me, it's not worth it. For cleaning the chain, if you're using oil, yes, you will get buildup of gunk on your jockey wheels and even on your cassette, and for me that's relatively quick and simple to remove. I just put a screwdriver and spin it slowly, watching not to cause any damage, and it gets the job done. You can use some wooden thing if you don't want to scratch anything with metal or whatever. The same goes for chainings. I have a bit thicker screwdriver that I just lean against chainings and wipe off the excess. So yeah, it takes some time, but you don't do that. You don't have to do that every week, and it's not that much of a more problem for me cleaning a drivetrain when I use oil. It just looks uglier, but for practical purposes in terms of chain life and drivetrain life and even performance and shifting, I could not measure much difference. I would not say that oil is better, but I would also not say that grease is better. So no, grease, not the country, I mean the oil, the lubricant. And I think I've now discussed everything that I plan to discuss about regarding the chain waxing. And as far as I'm concerned, I plan to go back to using oil after this experiment has been done. I might keep using wax for the gravel bicycle, because I use that on weekends and I can afford to lubricate it at one day and leave it for a day or two and then remove the excess and everything. And but for the bicycle that I use every day, it looks a bit less practical, and in a way, how do I say, for me, I don't think it saved me any time, even if I try to keep it clean. That's my opinion based on my experience, and I wanted to make this video and share this information. I would love to see some better invention like they made for the motorcycles. With Scott Euler, it didn't work out very well with bicycles, the things that they've tried so far, as far as I know, at least. And another problem with the modern bicycle chain is, I have that article on my website, that there are just pins with in the middle and rollers on the outside. There are no bushings as are on the motorcycle chains. Motorcycle chains have a bushing that covers the pins, and then rollers go over those, and those bushings have often seals, sometimes double seals, like the X ring or O ring rubber seals that keep the lubricant in between the pins and rollers. That's what's important to lubricate. Again, I'll put a link to the article explaining the bicycle chain wear and elongation and what happens. I might just take now that time to show it briefly on camera. Let's put it here. I think I can show that too. As you can see here, the wear happens between the inner plates and the pins. The outer plates are stuck. They are always at the same distance, but it's the between inner plates and pins that the wear happens. I'll try to disassemble this chain now and show it. So your chain should be dry on the outside. It is important to lubricate it on the inside between the pins and rollers. And here now I'll take one pin out. Park Tool should pay me for this advertisement. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can see the wear marks here, like too small. I have a page on my website that shows a severely worn chain with more exaggerated wear marks, but that's where let's remove the pin. Okay, let's remove the roller, sorry. I'll try to remove the roller now from between these pins, these plates, sorry, and show you the construction. I should be able to do this with my bare hands, hopefully. There it is. Here, this is the roller, and as you can see, the plates have a open slit in the middle, so this is not covering the pin entirely. And then the roller sits in between, and the water can come out and dirt easily inside and get to between the pin and the inner plates, and that gets worn as you're moving the chain. That's what wears. Here is the other side. This looks exactly as this one, only we have a roller on the outside and the pair of outer links. And so that's where the wear happens. These outer plates are static completely, and pin does not rotate or move relative to them, but it is the inner plates that rotate around pins, and that gets worn, that interface. And these pins, when your chain is elongated, when it gets worn, they get, let's get it out, come on. they get deep grooves here near the middle in the section where these are. Old chains were a bit wider and they had bushing covering this and creating seal between this outer area of one inner plate all the way to the outer area of the other inner plate. So that was like a seal that kept lubricant inside and kept dirt from going out, and so it made more sense to thoroughly wash and lubricate those chains because they lasted about 2 to 4 times more than modern chains, even the most expensive ones, because they cut costs and they also made their chains more flexible so that you can cross-chain them and you can have one-by drive chains with the chain going all the way from one angle to the other and other things. So there are some pros and cons, but again, the durability of chains has dropped, and that's how it is. I suppose that most people who are watching this don't know what those chains are like, don't even know that chains used to last a lot longer, so it's worth to mention. Yes, these are a lot less likely to break when you shift under load and when you ride cross-chained, and they allow you to have more gears with thinner chains and to ride one-by-drive chains, which are always cross-chaining when you're in the highest and lowest gear, because you cannot realign the chain by shifting on the front. But so pros and cons, they are easily you can find with 8-speed and stuff like that. They're not too expensive, so you can buy cheaper chains, replace them more often. Life is too short for me to spend too much time cleaning and lubricating my chains, but also it's too interesting of a topic to not do experiments, share my experience, and I'm interested in hearing your experience and feedback in the comment section. And now it's definitely the whole video. I hope I haven't gone over 1 hour in length. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload new videos. And you can support my work on patreon.com/BikeGremlin if you wish to help and if you like what I'm doing. And that's the whole video. Thank you very much if you sat through this whole video, and I will see you in some other video. Cheers. You thought it was over, but it's not. It's like those horror films when it wakes back. If you plan to start using wax, thanks to or despite having seen this video, I would recommend that you first degrease your chain with some mineral spirits or some diesel or whatever degreaser you have, and thoroughly shake it in a something like this is good because glass can break, but something like this is not bad. So you put the chain inside and give it a good shake. After that, it's not a bad idea to wash it. You can use some like fairy dishwasher liquid or things like that. I like this one, but I get 10% of each one sold. Of course, that goes without saying. Joking. You can use something like that and some hot water. It doesn't have to be boiling, of course, and then give it a good wash. And after that, to prevent any rust, it's a good idea to get from a supermarket over 95% alcohol concentrated. That's not as good for disinfection, but it's great for degreasing. And that will make sure that all the grease that might have been left over from your chain is washed away, and also that all the water is washed away because it mixes with alcohol, and then alcohol helps things evaporate very quickly, so your chain will dry extremely quickly. You can shake it off, and but that's what does it, and that's a good way, in my opinion and experience, to prepare your chain for waxing, if that's your thing, or if you want to try it. As I said in the long video, it has its pros and cons. I'm not 100% sure to say which is better. There are a lot of it boils down to how much you prefer drivetrain cleanliness, which is not, there's nothing wrong with wanting a clean drivetrain. So, but also it has downsides. So that's something that you must decide for yourself. And I hope this video has helped you make an informed decision, or at least entertained you at least a little bit. Now it's definitely over. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in some other video.